Have you ever wondered what hell is really like? The Bible has some shocking details that may surprise you. The torment of hell. The Bible says a harrowing picture of the unimaginable torment that awaits those condemned to hell. This place of eternal suffering is described as a realm of unfathomable anguish, where the souls of the wicked are subjected to excruciating and unrelenting pain. According to the scriptures, hell is a realm of pure, unadulterated torment, where the senses are assaulted by a barrage of unbearable sensations. The air is thick with the stench of sulfur and decay, choking the lungs of the damned. Screams of agony echo endlessly as the condemned writhe in torment, their flesh seared by the scorching flames that rage without end. The very ground beneath their feet is searing hot, scorching the skin with each step, while the oppressive heat bears down, robbing them of any relief or respite. Every nerve is alight with an excruciating, burning pain that never subsides. The anguish is all-encompassing, permeating every fiber of their being. There is no escape, no numbness, no mercy, only an unrelenting, eternal torment that strips away any semblance of peace or comfort. The souls in hell are subjected to a level of suffering that defies human comprehension, a torment so severe that it makes earthly pain pale in comparison. The eternal fire of hell. According to the vivid descriptions found in the Bible, the very foundation of hell is an all-consuming, unquenchable fire that rages without end. This lake of fire is the central torment that defines the horrific reality of the underworld, subjecting the condemned to an eternal burning that never relents. The scriptures make it clear that this is no ordinary fire. It is a supernatural blaze that defies all logic and natural laws. The flames that engulf hell are not fueled by earthly materials, but rather by the very wrath and judgment of God Himself. This is a fire that cannot be extinguished, no matter how much the damned may cry out in agony and beg for relief. It is an inferno that burns with a ferocity beyond human comprehension, searing the flesh and bone of those trapped within its grasp. The heat is so intense that it transcends the physical realm, penetrating the very soul of the condemned and subjecting them to an internal burning that knows no limits. The sheer, unrelenting intensity of this eternal fire is what truly distinguishes the torment of hell. There is no escape, no respite, no end in sight, only an unending cycle of searing, agonizing pain that stretches on for eternity. The damned are consumed by the flames, their very being engulfed by the consuming wrath of God's judgment. This is a fire that does not discriminate, showing no mercy to those trapped within its all-encompassing grasp. The weeping and gnashing of teeth. One of the most chilling and vivid descriptions of hell found in the Bible is the torment of weeping and gnashing of teeth. This harrowing imagery paints a vivid picture of the intense emotional anguish and despair that consumes the souls trapped in the underworld. Far beyond mere physical suffering, the condemned in hell are subject to an unrelenting torment of the spirit that manifests in heart-wrenching cries and the grinding of teeth. The weeping that echoes through the darkness of hell is not the occasional tear or soft sob, but rather an uncontrollable, unceasing outpouring of grief, sorrow, and anguish. The damned wail and lament with a level of emotional devastation that is impossible to fathom. Their cries of torment reverberate endlessly, a symphony of pure, unadulterated suffering that never finds rest or relief. Accompanying this endless weeping is the gnashing, grinding, and gnashing of teeth, a visceral expression of the unbearable agony that grips the condemned. The sheer intensity of their emotional turmoil causes them to involuntarily clench their jaws, grinding their teeth together in a never-ending display of anguish. This physical manifestation of their inner torment only serves to heighten the sense of hopelessness and despair that pervades the realm of hell. The weeping and gnashing of teeth is a vivid depiction of the spiritual and emotional devastation that defines the experience of the damned. It is a torment that transcends the physical, assaulting the very core of one's being with a level of suffering that defies human comprehension. This is the eternal fate that awaits those who reject God's grace and choose to remain separated from His love. The separation from God. Perhaps the most harrowing and devastating aspect of hell, according to the Bible, is the complete and total separation from the presence of God. While the physical torments of the underworld are undoubtedly horrific, It is the spiritual isolation and abandonment that truly defines the torment of hell. The scriptures make it clear that those condemned to this eternal realm are forever cut off from the love, grace, and mercy of their Creator. In life, even the most wretched sinner has the opportunity to seek forgiveness and reconciliation with God. But in hell, that door is permanently and irrevocably closed. The damned are cast out from the very source of all goodness, light, and hope, left to endure an existence devoid of the divine presence. They are thrust into a spiritual void, a realm of pure darkness where the warmth and comfort of God's love can never penetrate. This separation from the Almighty is a torment that transcends the physical, striking at the very core of the human soul. To be eternally cut off from one's Creator, to be forever denied the chance to bask in His glory and grace, this is a fate worse than any earthly suffering. The condemned in hell are left to languish in a spiritual desolation, their cries for mercy falling on deaf ears as they are irrevocably banished from the presence of God. The true horror of hell lies in this absolute and permanent severance from the divine. For without the light and love of the Almighty, the souls in the underworld are left to wither in an endless abyss of hopelessness and despair. This is the ultimate punishment, a spiritual torment that makes the physical agonies of hell pale in comparison. The darkness of hell. According to the vivid descriptions found in the Bible, the realm of hell is shrouded in an impenetrable, all-consuming darkness that defies comprehension. This is not merely the absence of light, but rather a tangible, oppressive blackness that seems to suffocate the very soul. The scriptures paint a harrowing picture of the underworld as a place of total and absolute darkness, where even the smallest glimmer of illumination is extinguished. The damned in hell are enveloped in an inky, suffocating void that strips away all sense of direction and orientation. There are no stars, no moon, no flicker of a distant flame, only an endless, all-encompassing blackness that presses in from all sides. This darkness is not passive, but rather an active, stifling force that seems to smother and consume any trace of light. It is as if the very fabric of the underworld has been imbued with a supernatural, sinister energy that devours even the faintest glimmer. Trapped in this oppressive, lightless realm, the condemned are robbed of their senses, left to wander in a perpetual state of disorientation and confusion. They are unable to see their surroundings, unable to discern friend from foe, unable to find any semblance of comfort or refuge. The darkness is all-consuming, seeping into their very being and stripping away any last vestiges of hope or reassurance. It is a torment that transcends the physical, assaulting the mind and spirit with a level of sensory deprivation that is impossible to fathom. This all-encompassing darkness is a uniquely terrifying aspect of the biblical description of hell. It is a tangible, overwhelming force that seems to smother the soul, leaving the damned in a state of utter helplessness and despair. The scriptures make it clear that this is no ordinary darkness, but rather a supernatural, malevolent presence that is intrinsically tied to the very nature of the underworld. The worm that never dies. One of the most vivid and disturbing images of hell found in the Bible is the presence of the worm that never dies. This chilling metaphor speaks to a torment that goes beyond even the unrelenting flames and darkness of the underworld, a torment of the soul that can never be extinguished. According to the scriptures, the damned in hell are subject to the constant, gnawing presence of this undying worm, a symbolic representation of their endless spiritual anguish. The worm that never dies is a metaphor for the unceasing, unrelenting guilt, shame, and remorse that consumes the souls of the condemned. Just as a physical worm burrows and gnaws away at its prey, this spiritual worm feasts endlessly on the consciousness of those trapped in hell. It is a torment of the mind and spirit that never finds rest or relief, a constant, nagging presence that serves as a perpetual reminder of the consequences of their sins and rejection of God. This worm represents the eternal weight of regret and self-loathing that the damned must bear. They are forever tormented by the knowledge of their own moral failings, the realization that they have irrevocably severed themselves from the grace and love of their Creator. The worm burrows deep into their psyche, devouring any semblance of peace or self-worth, leaving them in a state of unending anguish and self-flagellation. Unlike the physical torments of hell, this spiritual torment of the worm that never dies is one that cannot be escaped or numbed. It is a torment of the soul that persists endlessly, a constant, gnawing presence that serves to compound the other horrors of the underworld. The scriptures make it clear that this is a fate worse than any earthly suffering, a torment that strips the condemned of any last vestiges of hope or solace, the eternal torment of hell. Perhaps the most harrowing and devastating aspect of the biblical description of hell is the eternal, unending nature of the torment faced by the condemned. Unlike earthly suffering, which is finite and temporary, the torment of the underworld stretches on for eternity, with no possibility of relief or escape. The scriptures make it abundantly clear that the horrors of hell are not fleeting, but rather a permanent, inescapable reality for those who reject God's grace. This eternal quality of hell's torment is what truly sets it apart as a fate worse than any earthly suffering. The damned are not simply subjected to a finite period of anguish, only to eventually find respite or release. Rather, they are condemned to an unending cycle of torment, with no hope of eventual redemption or deliverance. The flames never subside, the darkness never lifts, the worm that gnaws at their souls never finds rest. The sheer endlessness of this torment is what truly defines the horror of hell. There is no end in sight, no light at the end of the tunnel, no possibility of ever finding peace or solace. The condemned are trapped in a perpetual state of suffering, with no reprieve, no matter how much they may cry out in agony. This is a fate that transcends the boundaries of time and space, a torment that exists outside the normal constraints of human experience. Indeed, the eternal nature of hell's torment is what makes it such a uniquely terrifying and unimaginable fate. For the damned, there is no escape, no hope of ever being free from the unrelenting anguish that consumes them. They are doomed to an eternity of suffering, with no possibility of ever finding rest or respite. This is the true horror of hell, a torment that knows no end, the eternal torment of hell. Perhaps the most harrowing and devastating aspect of the biblical description of hell is the eternal, unending nature of the torment faced by the condemned. Unlike earthly suffering, which is finite and temporary, the torment of the underworld stretches on for eternity, with no possibility of relief or escape. The scriptures make it abundantly clear that the horrors of hell are not fleeting, but rather a permanent, inescapable reality for those who reject God's grace. This eternal quality of hell's torment is what truly sets it apart as a fate worse than any earthly suffering. The damned are not simply subjected to a finite period of anguish, only to eventually find respite or release. Rather, they are condemned to an unending cycle of torment, with no hope of eventual redemption or deliverance. The flames never subside, the darkness never lifts, the worm that gnaws at their souls never finds rest. The sheer endlessness of this torment is what truly defines the horror of hell. There is no end in sight, no light at the end of the tunnel, no possibility of ever finding peace or solace. The condemned are trapped in a perpetual state of suffering, with no reprieve, no matter how much they may cry out in agony. This is a fate that transcends the boundaries of time and space, a torment that exists outside the normal constraints of human experience. Indeed, the eternal nature of hell's torment is what makes it such a uniquely terrifying and unimaginable fate. For the damned, there is no escape, no hope of ever being free from the unrelenting anguish that consumes them. They are doomed to an eternity of suffering, with no possibility of ever finding rest or respite. This is the true horror of hell, a torment that knows no end. The weeping and gnashing of teeth in hell. One of the most vivid and haunting images of the torment endured by the condemned in hell is the incessant weeping and gnashing of teeth described in the scriptures. This powerful metaphor speaks to a level of anguish and despair that transcends mere physical suffering, delving into the depths of the human psyche and spirit. The weeping and gnashing of teeth is a visceral representation of the emotional and psychological torment that permeates the underworld. It is the outward expression of the profound grief, regret, and hopelessness that consumes the souls of the damned. Trapped in the eternal darkness and unrelenting flames of hell, they are overcome by a profound sense of loss, sorrow, and self-loathing that manifests in this unending display of anguish. This weeping and gnashing of teeth is not merely a momentary outburst, but rather a perpetual, unceasing torment that defines the experience of the condemned. The scriptures make it clear that this is not a temporary state, but rather an eternal condition, a never-ending cycle of emotional and spiritual agony that the damned are powerless to escape. No matter how much they may cry out in despair, the torment only continues, with no hope of solace or relief. Indeed, it is this unrelenting nature of the weeping and gnashing of teeth that makes it such a profoundly disturbing aspect of the biblical vision of hell. For the damned, there is no respite from the overwhelming sorrow and self-loathing that consumes them, no opportunity to find even the briefest moment of peace or composure. They are trapped in a state of perpetual anguish, doomed to an eternity of emotional and psychological torment that defies all comprehension. The worm that never dies in hell. Among the most chilling and disturbing images of hell found in the biblical scriptures is the concept of the worm that never dies. This metaphor, used by the prophet Isaiah and echoed by Jesus himself, paints a harrowing picture of an eternal torment that transcends even the unquenchable flames of the underworld. The worm that never dies represents a torment that is not merely physical, but rather one that burrows deep into the very soul of the condemned. It is a relentless, insatiable force that gnaws away at the psyche, inflicting a torment that is both psychological and spiritual in nature. Unlike the fleeting pains of earthly existence, this worm is eternal, forever consuming the essence of those trapped in hell's clutches. This worm is often interpreted as a representation of the guilty conscience, the incessant remorse and self-loathing that torments the damned for all eternity. It is the manifestation of their own inner turmoil, the voice of their own failures and transgressions that they can never silence or escape. No matter how much they may cry out in anguish, the worm continues its relentless work, devouring their very being with each passing moment. The imagery of the undying worm also suggests a torment that is not only unending, but also inescapable. Unlike physical ailments or injuries that may eventually heal or subside, this spiritual parasite is eternal, immune to any form of treatment or relief. The damned are powerless to stop its ceaseless gnawing, doomed to endure its unrelenting assault for all of eternity. This is a torment that transcends the boundaries of time and space, a fate worse than any earthly suffering. Thanks for tuning in. Remember, as Jesus said in John 3:16, "For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whoever believes in him should not perish but have eternal life." Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notification bell so you don't miss our next video. And hey, leave a comment below to let us know your thoughts.